Hey guys, Paul here. Welcome back to APS Amplifier. Today, I've got a Yu-Gi-Oh proposition for you guys, and I want to hear your opinions on it. It's another day, another lack of a ban list, and I was thinking about it, and I didn't really want to talk about it much anymore. I don't feel like there's much else I can add to it in a video. Konami's either going to make it and release it, or they're not. I was thinking that maybe Yu-Gi-Oh should go back to the two ban list a year format. Now, hear me out. I know that you're already, typing some angry comment like, what the heck, Paul? That's stupid. I hate that. It's a terrible idea. Formats be too long. This and that. Just hear me out. Right now, there's been a big problem with, the ban list date getting more and more vague. We went from set dates, which were March 1st and September 1st traditionally, to kind of these more vague dates where it's like no sooner than X date. And then most recently, they've just changed to saying in a few months. The next ban list update will be in a few months. That's what you get. It's the FedEx kind of USPS style of delivery tracking. You get it when you get it. I think that Konami just needs to tell people when we're going to get lists again. I think that set dates would be a really good thing. I know that they have reasons why they maybe wouldn't want to do that. Perhaps it gives them a little bit more like ban list flexibility with like kind of hitting cards and changing things around, and not feeling like they're like I guess tied to that one date to do it. But my thing is that they should go back to giving us dates, and I also think they should go back to 6-month formats. This might be the Yugi boomer in me speaking, but back in my day, that was kind of what we were used to. I was very much used to just the whole March 1st, September 1st thing, and I think that it would actually work well for a few reasons. And so the reason why, number one, is I think that longer formats actually allow the so many things. First of all, they kind of force player adaptation. Right now, I think that formats are so short that it's actually kind of begun to cut people's attention span and like willingness to engage with a format to these really low points where within just a couple of months of some deck coming out or whatever, we're already just chomping at the bit for it to just get banned, right? It's like, oh, you don't like the format. Oh, you don't like a certain deck. It feels too strong. You just sort of assume like, oh, I can just complain and like wait a couple months and it'll get him on the ban list. And I think that that's not necessarily the best approach to things in a competitive game. I actually think that 6-month formats might be good because they would allow us more time to really adapt to the format, and players would have to, figure things out if they want to really, continue to compete. So even though a deck like Kashtira might be really strong, sometimes new threats come out. Sometimes people develop counterplay, and then Kashtira has to adapt to the counterplay, and then players have to adapt to that counterplay. And there kind of gets to be like more of a thing. If a ban list just comes out and hits Kashtira, sure, that's great. I know, like on the surface, it sounds like a good thing, but it just gets replaced with another really strong deck, and now it feels forced. So if you think about it, the last three major decks at least have kind of just been like they've come and gone, like getting hit by the ban list and then just like moved on. So if you think about sprites or TR elements or probably soon to be Kashtira, that's like three different decks where, if the list comes out tomorrow and it hits these decks, it's just going to be like, man, these decks only got like 3 months in the limelight at most. And then they're just sort of gone, and that really sucks. I think that, like, yes, I'm like, Kashtira is annoying, don't get me wrong, and like these top tier decks are really good. And I know the tier 0 argument is there for like the tier elements deck. But what I mean is that sometimes when you give the game a little bit of time to just develop and then give players time to adapt and form counterplay, formats can kind of fix or regulate themselves a bit more. And I think that if you have 6-month formats compared to, say, like, 3-month formats, you really allow more time for that to actually happen. Prime example, last year, the Adventure Token engine was absolutely huge. I remember that this engine came out and it was played in so many decks, so many things just tech the Adventure Token engine because it made decks a lot stronger, and it was a pretty annoying one to deal with. It was just, kind of the engine that like it gave you free removal, it gave you a free negation, it gave you free monster materials on the field, it could protect from Nibiru, it had very low real commitment to any of it. And it was fairly hand trap resilient, or it would force your opponent to waste their hand traps on that part of the engine, and then you could like do your other things. So I think that that seemed like something where people thought, okay, they're just gonna hit it on the ban list. Are they gonna like limit right? Are they gonna limit like water enchantress? And as it happens, none of those cards actually got limited. No part of the adventure token engine has ever gotten hit, and I think at this point, no one really expects it to, because it kind of got power crept, first of all, but also it just sort of fell out of favor with players. And I think that was probably going to naturally happen, and I sort of prefer that approach where things, they might seem strong at first, and it might seem like the immediate answer is to just like, okay, complain about it. It's awful. Konami needs to hit it, ban it soon, fast now, get it out of my face. But sometimes you just give it time, things just sort of figure themselves out. People either develop counterplay or like tastes and stuff change, and people just sort of like decide to take it out of decks. There are lots of cards and staples, I've mentioned this a lot on the channel, that just sort of like people complain about them and then they kind of like disappear, and then they come back and people complain and they disappear. So, evenly matched, that's a really good example. I remember when it first came out, everybody hated it. Then it experienced a really long time where it just kind of was absent from the game. But then now it's kind of like back in vogue and people don't like it again. But I think that that's okay. Because whereas certain cards might actually seem obnoxious, that's kind of where maybe like the floodgates and stuff come in, or like a tier 0 strategy. Other cards that are just powerful, I don't think are necessarily problems. I get it, that's subjective, where everybody determines that line of power is going to be different. But I actually think that things like evenly matched, I've seen those cards come and go. Things like, Lightning Storm's a really good example. Dark Ruler No More. People don't like it when it's like an extremely combo heavy format, but when the format doesn't feel that way, or when there's just a deck that's kind of more resilient to Dark Ruler No More, then suddenly it's not super relevant. I even think of cards like Crossout Designator that sort of feel like there are certain formats, certain specific times and settings where that type of card can be extremely powerful. But then on the other hand, it just isn't very good if the variety of decks is extremely high and there's not a super centralizing hand trap that needs to be stopped. And to me, that's okay. People complained about Zeus this way, people complained about Borrelsword Dragon this way, and those are cards that never got hit on the list, and they just kind of have managed. I think the current card that's sort of in that conversation feels like it's Access Code Talker. Some people want that to be banned, but like, I don't know if Konami necessarily will. They might just sort of be like, you know what, tough it out, figure it out. Like, it's gonna stay, and you need to find some sort of an answer to it. I'm not saying that like I personally am an Access Code Talker fan or apologist or whatever. I'm just saying that sometimes I think Konami sees it that way, where cards are strong, but they're strong for a reason and you just have to respect them. And then if you give it enough time, they just sort of like go away on their own. So I'm not saying that Kashtira will magically disappear if it doesn't get hit by a ban list tomorrow. But I'm just saying that, people might just continue to kind of develop counterplay, and then it could get hit at a time like September where it would have gotten, like 6 to 9 months in the spotlight, as opposed to like 2 or 3 months. So another thing with that too is that I think that the more frequent ban lists happen, the more volatile the game feels. And I feel like it's actually like not as safe to invest into anything. Because think about it, right? Like if you bought, Sprite or Tier Elements, you kind of got burned a little bit for it. Maybe not as much so as Sprite. They kind of got to be relevant for a bit longer, but also they, in both of their times, they were kind of overshadowed by another deck. And then they eventually just, they lost Sprite Elf, and now it's just, it's kind of hard to play the Sprite deck, at least as like a pure thing. And I think when you look at it that way, it's like, man, do we really need to have these like ban lists every 3 months? Because it just means that, yeah, okay, the May list hit Kashtira. So Kashtira came out in February, got hit in May. That sucks if you bought Kashtira. Tier Elements came out in, like August, they got hit in, February or whatever. Like, you didn't really get that long with that. And maybe right now the decks would be Purelli and Super Heavy Samurai. But then it's like, if you hit Kashtira, and then Purelli and Super Heavy Samurai, maybe let's assume they become the top decks, then will we just be complaining about them come August? And then it's like, okay, hit them, what's next? It's like decks getting hit like super duper fast. I think it's like it's kind of worn down people's like patience and willingness to just deal with strategies and let them kind of play themselves out, as opposed to just, complain and like just hope that it gets hit. But that sucks because it means like I would never feel safe buying a deck, and that would really be very fun. So, I don't know. I also think that, just kind of rounding back on the initial problem, a September and March thing would mean September 1st, March 1st, you're getting a list guaranteed. It becomes easier to know when to buy or sell decks. It becomes easier to know when to kind of commit to a certain strategy. Or if you're a content creator, it's easier to like know when to kind of create certain deck profiles or whatever. It's like, okay, I don't want to make something too close to the ban list. Like right now, if you're the type of content creator that makes kind of like profiles and tournament analysis and just like, tier list videos, you kind of are afraid of like committing too much to making a lot of that content or stockpiling it, because the ban list could come out tomorrow and then like all that stuff is down the drain and it's not really relevant content anymore. You can't release it. So that's kind of just my take on it. I understand that that's not like maybe the best solution to things. It ultimately still just comes down to Konami needing to communicate. But I think that 6-month formats could actually be pretty good for this game. They've been proven to work in the past. I don't think that anybody actually had explicit complaints with the 6-month format cycle. I think Konami just sort of changed it, and now we're just where we are. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you think that this is something that could actually happen, could work? Maybe, maybe not. I think I'd like it. I think it would just give a little bit more stability to things. It wouldn't feel so volatile. People would have to kind of just learn how to adapt to things and kind of deal with it for a little longer, and then the cards can still get hit, and that's fine. But yeah. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think, and maybe eventually they'll just release the list, and this type of video won't be super relevant anyway. Anyway, yeah, it's gonna be it. See you guys next time.